Hello and welcome to Authentic Conversations with Moji. It's Saturday afternoon. Saturdays we do something educational, something fun. And while we're waiting for people to show up, I have amazing guests on today. The conversation today was actually brought on because a friend of mine that's Igbo tried to rent a shop in Lagos, Nigeria, and she was declined her application for the space for a hospital, which everybody thought was going to be fantastic for the neighborhood, was turned down because she is Igbo and she's in Lagos trying to rent a shop. So I started to ask questions about people, from people around me, and I had absolutely no idea how deep rooted the racism, I call it racism, they call it, you guys call it tribalism in Nigeria. Tribalism in Nigeria has been around for many, many, many years. And it's 2020, there's so much that has changed. So I figure maybe it's time that we start to have authentic conversations with each other. So hang in there, share the video, call your friends into the conversation. It's going to be a very interesting conversation today. Hang on, hang tight, and I'll bring everybody into the studio. Welcome to Authentic Conversations with Moji. Hello, everybody. How are you?
Hello.
We're fine. Thank you.
Is everybody in? Well, somebody's in Nigeria, so it's going to be a bit off. So today I have Dayo Adenekon and his wife Tolu. Adenekon. I have Okonu Obasi. I have Prince Tolulokwe Ojugbele coming in from Nigeria, and I also have Olabisi who's on as well. Will everybody be kind enough, starting from Mr. Dayo Adenekon, then we'll go to Okonu Obasi, then we'll go to Prince Tolulokwe if he's available, and then Olabisi. If you'll be kind enough to introduce yourself and tell us what you do and what part of Nigeria, what area of Nigeria you're coming from. And I also have Margaret Wilson on the show. So please, Mr. Adenekon and Mr. Adenekon.
Okay, I'm Dayo Adeneko, originally from Abeokuta, Ogun State in Nigeria. And what else am I saying?
What do you do?
I live in Illinois. I'm a behavior analyst and a business entrepreneur and a real estate investor, everything. I've lived in the United States for some 38 years now, so I may not be as current with my information, but I think there's some things that I do know. And next to me is my lovely wife, and I'll let you get in two for the price of one. So.
Hello, my name is Temitope Anna Adenekon, and I'm from Abeokuta as well. I live all my life, born in Nigeria, born in Lagos part of Nigeria. And currently I'm a nurse, and I'm still in cosmetology. So I love both of my life. And when my husband told me about the conversation for today, I'm like, oh, I'm interested. I want to be part of that because I think I know a little bit about what the topic is to be discussed today.
Wonderful. Okonu, would you be kind enough to go on?
Right. Hello, everyone. Hope everyone's doing okay. Those listening from wherever you are. My name is Ukono Abasi. I'm from Abia State, so I'm Igbo. I'm based in the United Kingdom. I live just outside of London in Kent. I'm a healthcare management lecturer. That's my job. And I'm politically active here in the UK. I've stood for the United Kingdom's parliamentary election twice now. So I'm quite active in community and politics, both in the sense of the UK side of things, and I also keep a close eye on what happens in Nigeria.
Thank you. Olabisi.
Hi, everyone. I'm Olabisi Ajayi Layode. I'm based in England, in Essex, just outside of London. And what do? I'm a published writer, and I'm a blogger, and but my passion really, I don't get paid for it, is advocacy for humanity with focus on women and children, because in our society they are the ones that are disadvantaged. But basically, I will fight for any disadvantaged person.
Okay. And Mr. Tolulope Ojubile, can you hear us? Can you hear us? Okay. I'm also waiting for Asandia and Tucci Aguala, because I didn't want the ratio of
Um,
Yoruba to be higher than of non-Yorubas. My waiting is here. If you don't mind, you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah. Hi everyone, and thank you for joining us.
the connection is not.
Go ahead. It's very, somebody's thing is very noisy somewhere. Is somebody else listening in anywhere? It might be. Go ahead. Is it her? Okay, you go ahead.
Yeah. My name is Margaret Wilson. Are we good now?
Yeah.
Okay. My name is Margaret Wilson, and I was just saying thank you for joining us today. I call myself a mutt. So my mother is Efik and Ibibio, and my father is Isha and Urobo. I live in the United States, and I've been here for over 25 years, and I'm a physician.
Well, I'm Mojisola Wilson. I'm a licensed real estate broker in New York State. I am also a certified life coach and a jack of, I do flips, construction, and all kinds of stuff. A lot of fun. But one of my passion, like Olabisi, is human rights activists and trying to get people. What I do is transformational, people to transform their lives and to live an authentic sort of lifestyle. But today's conversation is very, very it's like a landmine because I've been doing research for about 2 to 3 weeks. I've been speaking to different people. Asandia Hogan is supposed to come on. She's Calabar, and it's important that we have a sort of representation of from almost every region. So with the tribalism, who wants to start? Just to give a small description of their experience, individual experience, not the history of how Nigeria became Nigeria and such, but their individual personal experience of tribalism. Is Prince in the studio? Where? He's not. That's Mr. Hold on 1 second. That's Mr. Buramo is joining us as well. Great. Mr. Buramo, would you be kind enough to tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from? Can you hear us? I'm just gonna have to. Yeah, I'm gonna have to do it with people that their thing is good. Okay, so who wants to go first?
I'm trying to. I'm trying to. The experience is not very good on my set. I'm trying to log to my computer.
Yeah, and then come back into the studio.
So I'll be coming out. I'll be coming out. Yeah, I'll come back into the studio. All right.
Okay. So, Mr. Brahim, okay. Oh, Tucci is on. Tucci, are you on?
Hi, I'm so sorry I came in late.
Okay. Can you do me a favor and move away from where you are so that the light is not in your face like that? I apologize, you guys. That's why I wanted to come a bit earlier. Perfect. So, Tucci, would you be kind enough to tell us who you are and where you're originally from? As in, go ahead.
Okay, my name is Tochi Ugola. I am from Abia State, so a proper Igbo boy.
And you're a fashion designer, right? He can't hear me. Okay, so basically what I would like is you guys to give us an experience or a little bit about your experience with tribalism. So, shall we start with Mr. and Mrs. Adeneko? Because you guys are on top of everyone.
Personally, I have not. I've always just seen Nigeria as a place that's very diverse with a lot of backgrounds. I grew up knowing about the Biafra War. I know that comes with it, but I can't say it affected me. I've lived a sheltered life in Nigeria. I went to a private school where we have everybody. so I grew up in that system. I see things, I hear things, but for me, I think it's, Nigeria is getting divisive more now, just like the rest of the world is. I think it's just something that's going on around the world. Everybody wants to blame what's wrong with them on somebody else.
Yeah.
In this country, the white people wants to blame the foreigners. Even in Nigeria, I remember the time of Ghana must go. We started blaming Ghanaians. Now we don't have people to blame anymore, so it seems like we're just pointing at each other and looking for faults and everything.
Okay.
People feel some parts, the Hausa part of Nigeria is more. They have more than the rest of the country because of what's happened. But for me, it's not been a terrible experience. It's just something you have to navigate around Nigeria. So.
Is it possible, Mr. Adenekon, is it possible that you have not had that experience because you're part of the Yoruba culture? Because for me, like you, I grew up in Nigeria. Um, I grew up in Nigeria. I was there till I was about maybe 16, 17 before I came to the US. And I lived a very sheltered life as well. Went to
Right.
private schools, and the people we mingled with were like up there, presidents and governors and all that stuff. But my question is it possible that you have not experienced, because it's kind of unconscious bias is hard to notice if you're part of the majority group.
Of course, I've never been to any eastern state, so I've never had to be away from my own territory, if you will.
Right.
So I don't know what would have happened if I go to Enugu or something. What I do know is I have a lot of Igbo friends. I have a lot of Hausa friends, and it's never been an issue with us. Now I know there's some sentimental things, and so for me, I've never been there, so I don't know how I would have been if I lived in Port Harcourt, or if I live in Enugu, or if I live in Owerri, or if
Okay.
I live in Kano. How would it have been? So yes, you're probably right. I've never experienced it, so I wouldn't know.
Okay, Ukono, would you be kind enough, or Basi, would you be kind enough to please give us a short description of your experience of tribalism in Nigeria?
Yeah, no, I think it's almost impossible to separate Nigeria's tribalism from the history of Nigeria. It's literally impossible. The problem with Nigeria is it is a nation of unwilling people. So people who have been joined together without their own consent are, basically forced to stay together. And then unfortunately, and this is the key thing, the environment simply hasn't worked. It hasn't worked in terms of basic amenities, security, economy, and that, should I say, hardship breeds conflict. If people are not happy, then, like Adenikon said, they are going to find someone to blame. If the economy isn't working, if there's no money, if there's insecurity, people are going to find someone to blame. So you have a situation where people are joined together without their own consent, and then that environment isn't actually working for them. It doesn't give them any amenities, doesn't give them prosperity in terms of the economy, it doesn't give them security and peace of mind. They're going to struggle to have any kind of unity, and that is the heart of Nigeria's problem. For me personally, I was born in the East. I grew up in the East. I'm an Owerri person, but I've traveled across the country. I've been to Lagos and a lot of Western states. Did my national service in Sokoto, in the heart of the North. I've obviously been to the Niger Delta and Port Harcourt and rivers and all the rest of it. So I've seen a difference in different psyches of people across the country. Now, ordinary people across these places just want the basic things anybody wants in life. They want to be able to raise their family. They want to have a peaceful environment. They want to be able to have a house,
Yeah.
healthcare, education. They want those simple things. But when they don't get it, and they see that there's very little option of them getting it because of the environment that Nigeria creates, then they're going to blame somebody. and that is the root of these ethnic clashes.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go to Asandia because she just joined the studio. Would you be kind enough to give us a little bio, who you are, what you do, where you live, and a short experience on what you think about the tribalism in Nigeria, and then I'll go to Olabisi. Go ahead.
Hi everyone. My name's Asandia Hogan, and I think I'm the official Epic Voltron on social media. So, so do not say anything against Epic people as we're here. But I'm a fashion designer. So I shuttle between Nigeria and England. I'm in England mostly. I mean, I can't specifically tell you I have an outright tribalism sort of story in terms of, when you have like very covert racism that, it's not overt, it's not in your face. So, someone says, oh, what's your name? Oh, what is it? Cassandra? Oh, I see, it seems, and it's like, can you not just try to pronounce my name like that? Can you at least make an effort, And you're saying, me, I like an Shinigal, but you can pronounce that properly, and you don't think that you should try to pronounce Asandia, So I wouldn't necessarily say to you, I've had, tribalism in your face, but I think those of us that are from, in quotes, minority in quote, minority ethnic groups, know a lot of these issues. And I mean, one perfect example, which is very, very common and a lot of people don't notice it, is to automatically speak to you in the language that, so if I'm in Lagos, it's happened to me, you walk into somewhere, or I'm with a Yoruba person, and we both walk into somewhere, and it's happened actually that they've met my own friend that's Yoruba, so they don't know this person, and they've met my own friend that's Yoruba, and the friend that's with me automatically starts to speak Yoruba to the other person, completely excluding me from the conversation when I have just introduced them too. I've also walked into, I remember we're driving from Lagos to Calabar one time, and I needed to use the ATM in Owerri, and we went to the ATM machine, and this lady was in front of me or something, so I must have asked her, oh, does it work, or is it giving out money properly or something? And she's like, she answered me back in Igbo. I said, I'm sorry, I don't understand. And then she started shouting at me saying, who are you forming for? Why are you lying and pretending like you don't understand Igbo? I'm like, Madam, the last time I checked, we're Nigerian. Everybody in Nigeria doesn't speak Igbo. Why do you think I would be lying or forming about speaking Igbo or anything else? So, I mean, I would say little things like that, not in your face, but I know of stories where, people, I have friends in particular that have been to places to rent houses, and they've been told they won't be rented to because they're not Yoruba. Well, I'm talking about Lagos, for example. So most of my examples might come from Lagos because, I've lived there as well. So you'd find that my friends would say, oh, they've specifically not been rented places because they're because they're not from Lagos, or they're not Yoruba per se. We all know the other one, because they're women, but I've also had guys that have not been able to rent because they're not Yoruba. But in terms of me, it hasn't been overt per se to me.
Is it fair to say, because while doing research, I found out that in certain other parts of Nigeria as well, for instance, I was told, again, I left Nigeria way too early, and I didn't, I was raised here by Europeans, so everything I know is research. Is it fair to say that that's a general practice all over Nigeria? Because I learned last night, as a matter of fact, from speaking to an elder person in Nigeria, that Lagosians, I learned three things yesterday. Lagosians, because everybody wants to claim Lagos. Lagos was actually put together by Brazilians that migrated to Nigeria, and they settled in Lagos. So originally, Lagos didn't belong to anybody. And then the Yoruba started to move into Lagos. And another thing I learned yesterday, which if I'm wrong, somebody needs to, let me know, is that if you go to
Don't let Bumi hear you say that. Don't let Bumi hear you say that Lagos belongs to no
well,
one.
that's why she's shaking her head. And that's why I brought Bumi
She's
in.
shaking her head already.
I think, I honestly think that this tribalism is embedded in all of us, no matter who you are. The only difference is that the Igbos had, there was a genocide that happened in Nigeria that all Nigerians kind of tried to sweep under the rug and pretend it never happened.
But the problem with that also is that the Igbos themselves practice tribalism inside the Biafra to the people that weren't Igbos.
That's
so, like you said, it's all, it all goes back and forth, really.
That's why we're having this conversation with people from different areas of Nigeria, because what you said was Igbos don't get places rented to them because they're not Yoruba. But I also heard that you can't buy land and you can't.
I didn't say Igbos. I'm not Igbo. I said my friends.
Your friends, okay. Well, my main issue is that the minority groups seem to be very highly discriminated against by the majority groups. And Calabar people are part of the minority groups, right? And
we're not Calabar people. We're not Calabar people. We're effing.
There we go. We're not fighting on this. Let's go back to Facebook. I beg. This is not the show. This is a show of trying to figure out a common ground, because times are going and they're going really fast, and a lot of people are getting left behind, education-wise, resources. There's so much that Nigeria.
But that's part of it. That's part of it. If we're not able to address people properly, it sort of comes up insulting also.
It's about education. Because that's why, if you notice on my post, I always say, pardon my ignorance, because there's a lot of people who don't know about Nigeria. And it's not our fault if we're not taught. And instead of teaching one, we're always fighting them. They'll never learn. I'll never learn unless somebody teaches me. Olabisi, please jump in.
Okay. I want to, before I do because I've been taking notes, I just want to correct a few misconceptions here. Mr. Adeneko, you spoke about the Ghana Must Go experience, which we all, I think most of us here, the youngest person will probably be a teenager when it happened. But what a lot of people know is that Ghana was the first person to send us home in the 70s. When the Ghanaian economy was booming, they said they didn't want foreigners. And Nigerians were the majority of foreigners in Ghana. They said they didn't want foreign Africans. Nigerians were the majority of, I think that was when we had the civil war and Nigerians were dispersed, and a lot of them dispersed to Ghana. And Ghana's economy was booming, so they sent us home. So us doing that Ghana Must Go in the 80s, when our economy was booming and theirs had taken a downturn, was a payback for them. So I just want to correct that, because a lot of people seem to think that we did Ghana wrong by sending them home.
If I may say something about that, when the Ghanaians first came to Nigeria, we were not saying Ghana must go when they were doing the dirty stuff, when they were doing the sobata, the camera people, when they, just like here, when the Mexicans and the foreigners were coming to do the farm work, there was no anti-immigrant. But it was when the Ghanaians started teaching classes and becoming school teachers and doing stuff that were more.
Mr. Adeneko, can you hold on, because I did let you finish talking.
Okay, I'm
not talking about the reason why we sent them. That's not. I'm saying that a lot of people don't know that it was Ghana that did first blood in the 70s. So that's what I'm correcting. I don't want to go into what they were doing that made us send us home. I'm just saying that a lot of people don't know that Ghana drew first blood, and us sending them back when the economy was down and ours was buoyant was a payback for them. I'm not saying it's right. In the spirit of Pan-Africanism, we probably shouldn't have done that. I'm just correcting, the records, because a lot of people don't know that. And then the second one, Mr. Obasi, I think I'll leave that for later. Let me do the third one about Eko. Eko is not no man's land, and then people seem to don't know that there's a difference. No, because because when they call me to talk, I'm going to touch on what you talked about.
No,
You
but
understand?
you
So it's
mentioned me. You might as well just spit it out. You know, just get it out now.
I will talk about it. Sorry, I will. I'm not saying I won't talk about it. I will talk about it, but it's going to
Okay.
be longer. It's going to be longer, so I'm just taking the shorter
Keep
one
going.
now.
We only have like
Lagos.
a little later.
People don't seem to understand that there's a difference between Lagos and Eko.
Yes.
You understand? Lagos was not even a Brazilian entity at all. Lagos is a Portuguese word. Sure, you understand? The Portuguese were the first people to come to that area of the Bight of Biafra, that area by the coast of present day Nigeria. And then later on, the British people came first for trading, and then after trading, they then evolved to become administrative. And then that word Lagos is a Portuguese word, like I said, is Lagos, means lagoon. The Brazilians came centuries later after the end of the slave trade. So the Brazilians can't say that they're the ones that set up Lagos. No. The original inhabitants of Eko were the Aworis.
Okay.
Yes? So they were the original inhabitants of Eko. And then the Oba of Benin had, it's a long story, but the prince from Benin came down and helped them in some tribal issues. And then they made him, they asked him to be the king. And that is why the Oba of Lagos owes allegiance to the Oba of Benin and not the Oni of Ife like other Yoruba tribes. So it is very, very wrong, and that is one of the things that gets the goats of Lagosians like me, who, yes, a lot of people claim Lagos, but there's a song that says, Isaleko Amorawa, Awa. If you say you are a Lagosian, you should be able to point to where your family compound is, not the one that your father built, you should understand, but the one that your great grandfather built, or your Iga or something like that. If you can't point to that, you can't say you're illegal. You can't say you're illegal. Now, Lagos State, which is what people confuse, is what was created later. I think just 25 or 26 years ago. So that's the misconception I wanted to correct. Nobody can say that Lagos was brought by Brazilians. No, the Brazilians came later. They have their own quarters. We have Brazilian quarters. We have the quarters for slaves of British, that came from the British colonialists. We have returned slaves from Brazil, and we have different quarters like that. We even have Egbas Egbas that have settled centuries back. They have their own quarter too in Isaleko. So I hope I've clarified that.
Thank you so much for clarifying that.
Am I clear on that?
Go ahead.
I have something to say, if I'm permitted. Okay, so I was born in Lagos, Nigeria, and I grew up in Lagos, Nigeria. My father is a retired soldier who later became a pastor and is still a pastor. So I said that part of my history because he was always excited to let us know what was going on around us and how we get to learn, and you just don't walk around your life with your eyes closed and thinking you are walking. Lagos, like Mrs.
Layode. Mrs. Layode.
Mrs. Layode said, is different from Eko. The part of Lagos that I grew up is called Isheri Awori, and that is the Isheri by Bega Ojodu Bega.
That's Magodo.
So my house. Say what?
That's Magodo.
Before Magodo, the Isheri has been there before Magodo existed. So that part of the Isheri that I grew up in, my house was the last house on that street. So you have to take the canoe, and they're still taking it up to today to go to that Isheri land. So they are the Aworis, the original Aworis. They started Eko. They are the Irodo Bere Eko, not Lagos. Now, they started Awori side by side with the Egas from an area called Edo Ido, 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 and the Aworis and the Egba, they come in contact starting all these without a lot of people knowing. And when you say today nobody owns Lagos, maybe the part of Lagos that we don't call Eko. So personally, when I finished college, I went to Abia State to serve. In the camp was called the camp was called Isialangwa. When we got there, they had to gather all the part of us that are corpers, but we don't speak Igbo language. They took us to the palace and they did head count, because that part of Abia State, they said, I'm not sure if that was true or not, that Washington, they still eat human beings, But so they had to do head count for us to be even part of that place. And they warned us, don't go out if you don't speak the dialect by yourself, be it day or no or night. So from that moment onward, I saw another part of Nigeria that I don't even have idea of. So there's always been this tribalism. There's no way, it's always has been and will always be. Now,
I have a problem with it will always be, because look, at one point in Nigeria they used to kill twins, right? When they gave birth, at one point in Nigeria they used to kill twins when they gave birth to twins, and now they no longer do that.
At that point, with the history of the twins that you said, I don't know at what point did they eradicate that. But I am talking about twins is not a language, Auntie. Twins is one thing they don't understand, why somebody can have a bat and have two kids at a time. When we talk about tribalism is language. And I don't know at what point
I think
having a language.
Moji's talking about evolving cultures, if I'm right.
What I'm saying is,
I think you should let Okono respond.
Yeah,
to that comment.
wait, that's where, okay, Mr. Okono, I think you should please respond.
I think we're deviating from what I understand is this topic. Now, just to clarify one thing very quickly about your Abia State corporate experience. Now, core members who came to Isialangwa were told those stories.
Please stop. Go ahead.
Was told those stories in order to keep them in check. All right, it's basically when you tell a child the story of the boogeyman in order to make sure that they behave.
Which is why I said I wasn't sure. Maybe it's true.
So that's all it was. But anyway, let's move to the issue. For me, tribalism it's about who gets what and who are you denying things. Yes. So when you're talking about, like practical things, when someone goes to a place and they can't rent a house, they can't buy land, they can't marry because of where they come from, that is what we mean by tribalism. If someone doesn't understand my language, it's one thing or another, but I can decide not to speak to that person. But if you deny me a basic right as a citizen of a country, then that's what I mean by tribalism.
Yes.
And as I said, tribalism is basically because...
Please, can I have it for 1 hour instead of 30 minutes? No, not now, at 7.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So
I'll bring her back in when she's ready.
Yeah, so for me, tribalism is once you recognize that there are people who are experiencing these inequalities. Now, the question is, why are they experiencing these inequalities? And the simple answer is that there's not enough to go around. When people are in a system where there's not enough to go around, they will fight over the ones that they have.
Yeah.
And when you now add to the fact that they did not even choose to belong there in this first instance, they had no conscious decision to belong to an entity called Nigeria, and then you brought them in, they're into Nigeria, and then the Nigeria that you brought them into doesn't meet their needs. There's going to be conflict.
Mr. Obasi, this is what I wanted to comment about before.
Yeah.
You see, we are all fond of saying Nigeria is an artificial entity. Yes, it is. if you know the history of Nigeria, Lugard formed us in a way that appealed to him emotionally. He had a soft spot for the Hausas because he felt that they were easier to manage, they were loyal and everything. I would recommend this book. I'll look for I'll Google the author now. It's a very great read for anyone who wants to know the history of Nigeria. So he loved the Hausas, and he respected the Yorubas, and then he hated the Igbos. And so that is the faulty foundation that brought Nigeria together. He loved the Hausas because he felt they were, docile and all. He respected the Yorubas because he felt that they were very, very intelligent. And then he hated the Igbos because he felt that they were difficult to handle, too independent. But then Nigeria is not the only artificial
it doesn't matter.
Entity. It's not the only artificial entity. It
doesn't change the fact of the reality of the situation.
I'm not saying it changes it.
Other artificial entities have somehow managed to provide.
Exactly. That is where I'm taking this. We are not the only artificial entity. India is an artificial entity.
I don't
understand.
We have to allow each other to speak one at a time, because then we don't hear each other.
India is an artificial entity. You understand? And they're making great strides. Kenya is an artificial entity. Ghana is an artificial entity. In fact, if you remember your history, you remember the topic they taught us, the scramble for Africa, where the colonial masters, Belgium, Britain, and they all sat down and they all just carved out. You understand? So we're not the only
Berlin Agreement. I know about that. Yes, I know my history. But the point is, we have a situation where people are unwillingly joined together, and they have expressed a desire not to remain together. So you mentioned Biafra. We, the Igbos, the Biafrans, wanted to leave, and they fought a genocidal war to keep us in. Okay, fine. So you murdered 3 million people to keep us in. For what? For us to suffer in a failed state? What sense is that? It doesn't make any sense for anybody. So the problem is that Nigeria
at what point do the Igbos also take responsibility for the fact that they also murdered people to keep people into their own Biafra? At what point does that happen?
No. What we want is to give everyone a choice. My question for everybody.
You haven't answered Asadia's question. You see, the Igbos were victims, and you see, it was a war. We were victims and we were villains. The Igbos were victims. Nigeria was a villain. Igbos were victims, but Igbos were also villains towards the smaller states, and that's what Asadia is talking about.
Let me step in for 1 second. 1 second. Everybody here understands that there was a war, right? And when there's a war, innocent people will get killed, and a lot of people that created the madness will get hurt as well. In a war, when America dropped the bomb in Iraq, they killed babies, they killed women, they killed innocent bystanders. That's a war. We're not arguing the war. We all understand. I know more about Biafra now, today, than I know about my Yoruba culture. You understand? So when we sit around and talk about the war and we want to go back and forth, and I let me finish. We have to also remember that the Jews went through a genocide in Germany. They did not allow that to destroy them.
Well, they got a state out of it.
They very strong people.
They got independence out of it.
Pardon?
They got Israel. They got the state of Israel out of it.
I totally understand. I hear you. They got the state of Israel out of it, but also when the Jewish people in Brooklyn reside in Brooklyn, they get along with the Muslims in Brooklyn. Everywhere in the world.
Give us our state, we'll get along with everybody.
We're not here to argue your state.
But what is your state?
I think you see that part is deviating. It's deviating from
you and your state.
Everybody. We're talking about tribalism. We're talking about tribalism. We're not talking about the breaking up of Nigeria. We're talking about whilst we are in the contraction called Nigeria, how do we deal with each other?
Can I point? The point I was making was, if you're going to deal with tribalism, then you have to deal with the issue of consent. You have to deal with the issue of people consenting to belong to Nigeria. You cannot hold someone without their consent and expect them to be content in a failed system.
You do
Can I say
know.
something? Can I say
It's
something?
just not possible.
Chrissy, 1 second.
Can I?
Okay, you do know that the United States of America, where I'm sitting today, what did not really belong to the Americans, like many states. And
Yes, they
that
promised to
Texas
do.
was originally part of Mexico, so was
Yep,
California.
yep, yep,
Once the whole United States was created, there will
yep.
be blanket laws, and then
Yes,
there's state laws, and then there's regional laws that we
yes,
all abide by.
yes.
I
And
think
I
we need
told you there are two criteria. One, you have to have consent, and I think even in the United States, there's a little bit of consent because states had to join, join the United States as it was called.
Thank you.
And then two, United States by and large has a system that works. Now, these two criteria don't happen in Nigeria. You have a forced unity, and then you have a state that has failed utterly. So,
I'm going to
if at least
Excuse me, sir, with all due respect, having a failed state or not does not stop you from treating me properly like a
no,
human being.
no,
It does not stop you.
everybody,
We're talking about tribalism. We're not
no,
talking
no,
about
no.
the
Listen,
contraction called Nigeria. We're talking
listen.
about tribalism. We're talking about
I
how
agree.
you treat people differently. We're
But I
talking about
agree with
how
you.
the system is skewed to treat
No,
people differently. We're not
that is
talking whether you're in Nigeria or not. People in Owerri. I went to school in Enugu State. The people in Enugu State do not like the people in what you call it in Onitsha. That does not have anything to do with whether we have a Nigeria that people gave a consent to or not. It
that's
has
what I'm
nothing to do with
no,
it.
but it
We're
does.
deviating from the
But it
issue.
does.
Can I say something?
But it does. But it does.
Can I say something, please?
So,
It does.
why I went to school in Enugu for my
But
first year secondary school.
well, let me
Why
tell
do the
you why.
people in Onitsha not like the
Yes.
people in Enugu? They
Well, let
are
me tell
both
you
in
why.
Biafra.
If you can calm down, I can tell you why. All right. So the simple thing what I've been explaining. Tribalism at any scale, whether it's in the home, whether it's in your in your neighborhood, whether it's in your office, any kind of inequality, bad treatment comes from a place where there's not enough to go around. So where people feel that they have to conserve or share resources or allocate it, then they will tend to try and favor it to people who sound or look like them because they believe there's a limit to those resources. And that's what breeds conflict. That's what breeds tribalism.
So the woman, my example that
You're not letting me
the woman
finish.
that met me in the
You're not
banking
letting
hall
me.
or the ATM hall in Owerri
She
State.
wasn't being
Sorry, not
tribalistic
Owerri.
to you. She
I can't remember where it
she
was.
just had a
You know
chip on
where
her
it was.
shoulder. That's not
Treated me
tribalism.
the way she treated me because she didn't have
That's not
enough to eat.
tribalism.
Let me.
That's not tribalism.
Okay, time out, everybody, please.
That's not tribalism. She didn't deny you anything. She just spoke to you in a rude way. She's a rude person, but that's not tribalism.
Okay,
She didn't
can we
deny you anything.
for a second? Margaret would like to jump in.
Yeah, I haven't had the opportunity to say much, which is usually the way it works out in Nigeria. We have this massive conversation going on between the majority tribes, and the minorities can barely get on with it. As Sandia tried to point out the difference between Calabar and Epic, she couldn't, but Olabisi could go on for 30 minutes, I exaggerate, or 3 minutes, telling us about the difference between Lagos and Epic, right? So those are the kind of things that as minorities we sit back, and it becomes for us not about governments and states and regulations, it just becomes for us an issue of just humanity. So like I described myself as a mutt when we started off, Epic Ibibi on one side, Ishan Owobo on the other side, first cousin to our Yoruba, the second cousin who's Hausa. I grew up for the majority of my life before I moved from Nigeria in the West. You asked at the beginning, the tribalism, my experiences of tribalism.
Exactly.
The sad thing was that when I was growing up, there was, tribalism was normal. It was like almost normal. There was no recourse to it. So, living in the West, you just recognized that you didn't have the Yoruba privilege. It's like we talk about white privilege, we talk about male privilege. It's nothing that, the majority tribe intentionally put in place. It just is. And a lot of, my experience was laboring under that privilege. Now, I then, so that's the experience I had. When we talk about the Biafran War, and it gets really heated up. But I think we all need to remember, like you said, there were personal experiences in this war by people who actually had nothing to do with it and were just caught up in the middle of it all. My personal memory of the Biafran War was my grandmother having to be taken out to sleep in the jungle every night because they were scared that some troop would come in. And they lived in Calabar. That's what I remember. So I think that as we begin to have this discussion, the reality is, as much as we might want to think this show is going to fix tribalism, it's not. It's not going to make a dent. But what this show could potentially do is begin to help us take that first step to treat each other with civility.
Yeah. And one of the reasons why we do authentic conversations, it's not to come at each other, but to find a resolution to how we treat each other, one person at a time. I'm happy to do another show on why the Igbos should go on their own and the Yorubas, because I have a guy that's on standby, that's an extremist Yoruba person. I chose not to bring him on at the moment because it was very noisy. It's very noisy where he is because it's on the street. So we can always do another show. But this particular show is about how we treat each other. How if I, as a Yoruba person, walk into a room, and I'm guilty of it. I've gone to the African market, and as soon as I step in, I just assume everybody speaks Yoruba because I'm Yoruba. That's just the way it's been. There was a case where I was saying something. I even spell Igbo. I spell it wrong. I spell Igbo wrong. Because I spell it the Europeanized way, the E instead of the I. Those are things that we are not being taught. Those are things that we all need to start to address. Why is it that we're not teaching our children about our culture?
Can I
To
just
be
say?
able to understand your pain, Mr. Obasi, I, Moji, have to understand what happened in the past. If you don't know your past, you can't figure out your future. That's the way I was raised.
Listen, I just think the issue is, for me, simple, and I understand that people have different, emotions and feelings about this thing. I have them myself. Now, Nigeria is meant to be a circular state. It's meant to be a nation that is built on laws and rules and regulation that is equal to everybody, no matter who you are. Wherever you come from, it doesn't matter. That's how it should
I think
be.
you mean federal
Right?
state, not secular states. You mean federal states.
No, I mean it's circular. It's in terms of the laws. It's not
No,
built
in terms
on.
of the law, it's the federal states. It's not. It's the circular states, yes, but in terms of the
And
law,
that's what I just said.
no. You said it's a circular state, yes, but in terms of the law, it's a federal state. A circular is about religion. We don't have an
That is what
official
I was
religion.
referring to. If you let
No,
me finish.
no, no.
Are you
In
telling
terms
me
of
what I'm
the
referring
law,
to now?
in terms of the law, it is
You
a
can't
federal
tell me
state.
what he's referring to, Olabisi, because at the
No,
end
because I have a law background. I'm correcting
And
that.
so what?
We are talking
You
about, if
can't
we're
tell
talking
me
about
what I'm
law,
referring
we are
to now,
talking
can you?
about
Could you just let me
federalism.
finish?
Not,
Could you let me finish? I was saying it's a circular state. Okay. Now, if you understand the meaning of circular state, that's what I meant. Okay. So
okay,
it
what is your
doesn't.
for
definition of
those
secular
that,
state, please? Can I
excuse
ask?
me, for those that do not know what a secular state is, can
Oh
you,
my.
Yes,
Mr.
what is
Obasi,
your definition of
Mr.
a secular
Obasi,
state?
Oh
take
gosh.
time to
Oh
explain.
gosh.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think we're moving away from the
I mean,
purpose
come
of
on.
this
If you're
talk.
not gonna let me speak, I mean, this becomes
Uh,
a bit
No,
if
I'm
I
ridiculous.
may say
asking, what is
something,
your definition
No,
of a secular state?
I'm not taking an exam
Olabisi,
for you. I'm not proving my intellect to you. Okay. So just let me finish. If you disagree, then tell me why you disagree. All right. That's how it works.
go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you.
okay, if I may say something, I think we're seeing why tribalism will always be part of Nigeria.
No, my point, the point I was actually trying to make was that because this country, the country Nigeria, has failed in terms of implementing those very laws that it made. that is meant to give everyone equality.
Yes.
That is why you have tribalism. Because if you have a situation where people are favored by the very laws based on where they come from, then there's no equality.
Of course.
All right. So that is a failure of the country itself. And when I talk about people being forced to belong to it, there's a reason why that country has failed, because no one feels a stake. If people don't feel they have a stake in something, then they will mistreat it. But if they felt they belong to it, then they have a stake, and then they treat it better. And that's what it all comes down to. So I'm not too worried about the name calling and not understanding language. People, we live here, I live in the UK. There are many people who speak different languages. But the system allows everyone to be treated the same.
I have a question for you. Is
Yes,
it a
please.
failure of the state, or is it a failure of the people?
Well, the people make the state. The state is a function of the people. So it is that recognition, like I said, that those people do not feel that they belong to this entity because they didn't choose to belong to the entity.
Well,
But it's about choice, though. It cannot be about Mr. Senator. Give me a second.
Your point, everybody in America should feel they did not choose to be here.
Well, you chose to be there.
No.
You left your country. You left your country. I came to America.
No, I'm not talking about us. I'm talking about the American Indians. I'm talking about the black people.
Well, they didn't want anybody to be in America.
Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
What you are saying is that for as long as Nigeria has been alive, the Igbos always feel cheated.
Yep.
Let's just call it.
Yeah, true.
Okay. The impact of the Biafra War is still there. That's a fact.
Of course.
We did not set up Nigeria. Nigeria was set up the way it is. That's where we found ourselves. Obviously, the Biafra War was an attempt to separate, and it did not work. There are consequences to war. When you lose a war, certain things happen because of it. Now, having said all that, from the distrust between the Igbo plus Igbo group and the Hausa generally, there's a level of great distrust there. And that's not something we can wipe off. It will always be there. Distrust. The Yoruba people have always been like the neutral person. If you want to look at the three people, like, Yoruba will go wherever stuff goes wrong.
But there isn't three people in Nigeria. There aren't three.
I understand.
This is the other thing. There's no three people in Nigeria. There's no three ethnic groups in Nigeria. This is one of the biggest misconceptions of Nigeria.
I agree with you, ma'am. And just like the Hausas are not one. There's nothing monolithic about Nigeria. Right. We are so different, and that's what makes us special. That's the thing. People always talk about let's separate, let's do this, as if it's as easy as going to a drawing in a boardroom and just drawing a line and say, you take this, I take that. Almost every war in the world is caused because they're fighting for land. That's the bottom line. Every culture in Nigeria have managed to be successful. There are more money in Igbo land than any other part of Nigeria, if you want to look at it that way. Now, the feeling is, like you said, everybody doesn't feel like we're represented in the presidency and all the other stuff. Like if somebody's stunned, I don't buy the idea of
it's not about the presidency.
Stunned to be president or something. If somebody's stunned,
no, but
if we have a good democracy, it's whoever wins. I don't care.
It's not about the presidency. It's not about the presidency.
Let me take a few comments from the audience. Yeah, Mr. Omocho says, so Mr. Obiaha, are you speaking for all the Igbos?
He's getting my name wrong. It's Mr. Obasi, first of all. Right? No, I'm not speaking for all Igbos. I'm saying as an individual and as a Nigerian that you cannot hold people without their consent. You cannot have people who belong to an entity without their consent. You have to at least ask them. Now, when they give their consent and decide they want to belong to that entity, then they are more motivated to work towards the success of that entity.
If I may just jump in 1 second.
Yes.
I believe that when people vote, and I understand that the political system in Nigeria is really not kosher.
Well, exactly.
But
Well,
what
exactly.
Sorry?
Well, exactly. When you say about votes, and then you go back to the fact that the voting system is
But that
rigged.
has nothing to do with the way Mr. Chukwumeka, because for me, part of my biggest problem here, one of the reasons why we're having this conversation is because I'm Yoruba, I'm automatically expected not to like Mr. Obasi.
No.
Or I'm expected not to like Inky, or I'm expected,
I think we keep getting. Okay, let me try and give you an example, right? Now I live in, yeah. If I live in the UK, right? If I go into a train, and some white person decides not to sit beside me, okay, because he's racist, that's their business. I don't care. It's not my problem. It becomes a problem if I walk into an office and that white person decides not to give me a job because I'm black.
Now,
right?
that's what we're talking about.
That's where it becomes a problem. But they can't do that because there's a system that prevents them from doing that. Okay? We don't have that in Nigeria.
But we do have laws and regulations. We have, see, part of the problem.
Yeah, right.
In my way, we have rules.
So that basically means there's no racism in England, then, right?
Of course there is. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Of course there is.
Again, we have laws. Everybody, hold on 1 second. We have rules and regulations.
Exactly. The point is that people are going to circumvent things because they want to.
You can't speak over people because then we don't hear each other.
Yeah, fair enough.
We have rules and regulations in Nigeria. They're just not, they're not upheld by anybody. But it's not just the Yorubas or the Igbos it's everybody. People don't stop at red lights in Nigeria because of the mentality of the people.
So the question is why?
You tell me.
Well, I told you they are joined. They don't want to be there.
The problem is
what I'm
enforcement.
saying. They don't want to be there.
Enforce the laws, it will never be.
They don't want to be there. So no one has a stake. No one wants to fix anything because they don't feel they have a stake.
Who doesn't want to be there? You keep saying they don't want
We don't. We don't. Igbos don't want to.
Who is we? No. Speak for yourself.
But you can't speak on behalf of people. You can't speak on behalf of people.
Hold a referendum and then
no, you are.
How is this got to do with tribalism? How is this got to do with tribalism that we can't get to talk about?
No, you asked me why.
Speaking for yourself.
No, hold a referendum then find out what we want.
Why would you want to do that?
So why are you speaking on behalf of them?
You want to know what we want. You haven't held what we want or you don't.
Okay, hold on for a second.
You can't say we. You don't speak on behalf of all Igbo people.
You keep saying we. You're living in
the
UK.
You know, one of my biggest problems, listen, please.
Tell you what we want.
Wait 1 second. The reason why it was important to bring a Nigerian person that lives in Nigeria on, and I'm going to text the people that live in Nigeria to give their experiences, is that there's been too many times when I hear people talking about we're leaving, it's usually people abroad that are leaving. You don't live in Nigeria. You don't experience Nigeria. You don't know what's going on in the Nigeria on the ground every day. And
Thank you.
Hear me out. You keep saying we are leaving, we want to leave. But there are people that are in Nigeria going through the pain every day.
Yeah, so hold the referendum to ask them. Ask them.
What was that?
Why have we derailed? Why have we derailed into referendum?
But you say I don't have the
Why are we derailing into referendum?
Then.
Is this talk about Biafra and referendum?
Well,
is that what this talk is about?
No, it's not.
So what's going on?
Which is try to ask me a question, I'll answer.
So let's go back to tribalism, please, because then it's a waste of time. People are falling off like flies because when we get into referendum, we have no place. There's no bottom. It's like a hole, a black hole. There's no bottom line. So how do we go from here in how we treat each other?
I'd like to ask a question, if I may.
Go ahead.
Does anyone on this panel believe that they are biased or tribalistic in any way? And I will go first. I will say that for a long while, I had unconscious bias as it related to specific groups. I had these weird ideas of what the Yorubas were like, weird ideas of what the Igbos were like, weird ideas of what the Hausa were like. And being from the minority group, which has been assigned by society, Nigerian society lower status, it was so very easy for me to believe that. And I must say I had to recognize that in myself in order to grow. So I ask everyone the same question. Is there anyone here who believes that they are not tribalistic in any way and that the
Can I
problem is?
go? Can I go? No, Mr. Basti, please let someone else talk. Can I go?
Go ahead.
You see, if you look at the dictionary definition of tribalism, there's nothing wrong in it. Tribalism simply is pride in your own tribe.
No.
And everybody, no, can I finish? Can
No, that
I
was
finish?
not you can comment, but for people listening, I've got to be very clear what my question was. My question, my definition of tribalism, and if I'm wrong, let me retract that. Let me go back to that definition that implies that, there are negative stereotypes assigned to a group that cause them to be positioned incorrectly in society in terms of our perception and subjects them to prejudice and bigotry.
That's right.
That is my question. And I answered my question saying yes. I did.
What we have that is a problem is bigotry. Let us call it its name. It's not tribalism, it's bigotry.
Okay, so
give me anyone that says they are not tribal is lying, because I have an allegiance to my tribe. That is what tribalism is about. But when I now start discriminating against the next person, you understand, that is bigotry. So I love my tribe, I'm proud, and there's no problem with that. Now the problem with Nigeria is that you have.
Obviously, I appreciate the response. Before we get to the country, let me break that down and make it simpler then. Is there anyone on this panel who is willing to admit that they have negative stereotypes about other groups of people in Nigeria? I'll go first and said yes. I went through a period when I did have those stereotypes and had to work on them.
I've never had any negative stereotype. I've always felt we're different.
Okay.
But it's not that I thought because you're Igbo, you're bad, because you're Hausa, you're good, or Yoruba, you are. Most of the worst thing that's happened to me in my life were on the hands of Yoruba people.
Yeah.
So that's my experience, and that's what I judge people by.
Okay.
I've never had any negative impact from an Igbo person or from an Hausa person. Never. So for me, I just don't know about them, and that's ignorance. That's ignorance on my part. I was never thought too much about the other parts of Nigeria. I don't know the language, so when you don't know what people are saying around you, you become apprehensive. But we're all human beings. We're all products of our experiences. We're all products of what our parents are saying at home.
Exactly.
And you grow up, and you hear your parents say, "Igbo jati jati," excuse my language, or something like that. That's what we learn, and we grow up with that. So
that's actually going to the heart of my question and my response. Yeah. Because a lot of the negative stereotypes I held were driven by unconscious bias.
Unconscious bias.
Sure. And that's a human factor. That's still the same way it is here. We come to this country, we still have those unconscious biases about African Americans. A lot of our people come here, we don't appreciate the sacrifices of African Americans, and we're here talking about these people, they're lazy, they're this. That's false. But that is what we were told by the people that we came here. When you got to this country, the Nigerians that you met, that's what they told you. That's what the news tells us. Every time we hear the news, is about a black person committing a crime. Subconsciously, we start thinking that. But that's a human nature, and that's the way it is.
So, do you believe that exists in Nigeria as well?
Oh yes, yes. I mean, we will not be human beings if it doesn't.
You see, what I personally believe is that we are different, obviously, and then each tribe has its strength, which can also be a weakness. You understand? You can have something, you can have a character trait that is fantastic, but everything has a flip side. So while each side has their own strength, those strengths, that is what I've come to understand. That is what I've come to believe about Nigeria. Each tribe has its own characteristics that has a flip.
Yeah.
And, it depends on how we then navigate, how we, use it. If we decide to use the positive side of that character, let me give an example. I don't really know about Hausas. I don't really know about them. I schooled in Jos, and Jos is not call Hausa Justice be wrong. Most of my friends are either Yoruba, Igbo, or people from the south, like ethics and Ibibos. So most of my I'll use an example of Yorubas and Igbos. Now, Igbos believe that Yorubas are hypocritical. We are two-faced. That is the common thing that they talk about. We are two-faced and everything. And then what do we believe? What do we believe about Igbos? I don't even know. But you see, I was talking to an Igbo friend of mine this morning, and I said, you know what? I've had a realization. I've had a realization about Igbo characteristics, and please correct me respectfully if I'm wrong, Mr. Obasi. Igbos have an urgency about them. With an Igbo person, if an Igbo person doesn't like you, you will know. Sure, you understand? They don't hide it. Sure, you understand? They are like that. What you see is what you get with them. Whereas with a Yoruba person, a Yoruba person may not like you, and you would know, because that Yoruba person is still smiling with you and still waiting for when they'll be able to, to strike. Sure, you understand?
That right there is what we call unconscious bias. That is right there.
No, it's not unconscious bias. It's a culture. It's a culture. Yorubas have various sayings to boost this. That until you're in a position to act on something, you don't do anything. You just continue to make things okay for you. And to others, it will come across as hypocrisy, because the Yoruba person is waiting.
Hypocrisy.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
It is hypocrisy.
That's what I'm saying. That is the negative aspect of being able to hold something and waiting. Sure, you understand?
Because I'm Yoruba, and when what I say is what I'm feeling.
You are not typical Yoruba. You are not typical Yoruba.
But those are stereotypes, is the point I'm trying to make. Those are
Machi, this is what we're talking about. We can't. It's the danger of a single story. We can't be using a single story to identify, but what Bumi is trying to say is, yes, generally, this is what they're known for. The same way we can say here, generally, ethnic people are known to be hospitable. Does that mean that every single last ethnic person is hospitable? No, not necessarily. There are people that are not, for example, I'm different from my mother. My mother would be the quintessential ethnic woman. I'm more like the Agbero of the ethnic people. Do you understand? So, we can't, and I think this is what, Bumi's trying to say in terms of unconscious bias. And when, since Margaret said, do we all have, does any of them? I'm like, yes, we do. Because you grow up hearing these things. You grow up seeing certain things. But at the end of the day, what I think Sis Bumi's also trying to say is, when we use those things that we hear, those negative things we hear against these people, that's when it now becomes tribalism. And please, just for the sake of knowledge, let's all stop.
Please hold on. I'm saying that.
Hold on. I didn't cut you. Just hold on. Let's all stop calling each other tribes. We're not tribes.
What I was doing.
Ethnic
you're talking about Akazulu.
Can I just ask a very simple question? Is there any law in Nigeria, either at the state or local or federal level, that punishes anybody from acting in a bigoted or tribalistic way to any citizen of Nigeria?
No.
Well, there you go. There you go.
Yeah, but that's a Nigeria problem. That is a Nigeria problem.
That's the failed system I've been talking about.
Well, look, everyone, we all agree that the system is failed. I am not, look, I've done many shows on segments of the country where the states are failing, the people where the federal government is failing, everyone in the country. The whole country has failed everybody, including me. When I came to America, I wasn't staying. I was coming here to acquire education and go back to Africa and build houses for poor Nigeria. That was my goal. But the way the country has evolved, it's nothing like that is possible, because we now live in a country where if you don't know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody, you can't get anything done. We now live in a country where if you're Yoruba and you have 8 distinctions on your WAEC, you can't get into University of Ibadan because the person that had 0 probably didn't even take the WAEC is going to get in because they're Yoruba. We get all that. I'm not disputing the fact that Nigeria is a failed country. We all know that. My question is, where do we go from here? I understand where you want to go.
I was going into that because I need to log off soon, please. Let me just quickly round up what I was saying. Is that we all have a characteristics, whether it's I don't even know how to explain this. We all have a characteristics. Now, those characteristics have flip sides and positive sides to them. Now, if we all understand that we are different and we all decide, you understand, to look at the positive side of those characteristics rather than dwelling on the negative sides, that I think is the future. Instead of continuing to hold on to the negative biases that we have. You understand? Right. For every characteristic we have, you understand, there's a positive to it. The Yorubas are very accommodating. The Yorubas are very diplomatic. The Igbos are very go-getting. They are great traders. You understand? But then these are the positives of it. There's nothing that's an absolute. There's nothing that's absolute 100% positive. There's nothing that's 100% negative. You understand? Now, if we decide that, okay, let's, instead of looking at Igbos as they can sell their mother for money, you understand? If we now leverage on Igbos are they have a go-getting attitude. Sure, you understand? They will do it instead of they can sell their mother for money. Sure, you understand? If we now look at Yorubas are very diplomatic people. Sorry.
Igbos love their mother just like any other person does.
Oh, please, Mr. Obasi, I'm just using an example. Yeah, and then if you now look at, instead of saying, Yorubas are very two-faced, they are very hypocritical. If you now look at, Yorubas are very diplomatic, they are very good at avoiding strife. They will look at ways of settling peacefully first before fighting. You understand? I think that is the way to go for us. Instead of looking at the negative side of every characteristic, we look at the positive side of the characteristic and work together. That's my summary.
You were asking for solution. For me, I think it starts from the little. When we're little, we need to be taught about each other. All my years of schooling in Nigeria, I did not learn anything about the other parts of Nigeria.
Yeah, that's a problem.
And with all due apology to Asendia, I left in Nigeria that the only thing I knew about Nigeria was 3: Igbo, Hausa, and Yoruba. You were either in one of those 3 things. But if I had been taught in school that about Efik, about Edo and all the other parts of Nigeria, then when you don't know anything about somebody, that's when the stereotypes come in. That's when the bias come in. If I knew if I was taught Igbo language or Hausa language as a young child in school, even if it's just an optional class that I had to take, if I can speak to you, I can trust you and respect you. But if I cannot understand what you're saying when you're talking to your friends next to me, then there's a level of distrust, especially if I don't know you. So it has to start at the beginning. For our generation,
and this is something that Margaret and I can testify to. When we're growing up as ethnic children, we were specifically taught, when there are people that do not speak ethnic around you, you do not speak ethnic.
Isn't that
speak English?
Yorubas as well. You are taught that as well. Yorubas as well. It's not people now decide on their own.
Let me tell you,
individual. I don't think any tribe.
Nobody. I'm Yoruba, and I grew up in.
I don't think any tribe teaches their children that if there's an outsider here, you make them feel like outsider. I think it's an individual thing. I don't think there's any tribe that.
Please, I'm sorry to say to you, I probably outside of, I think every ethnic person will tell you, outside of ethnic people, the other set of group of Nigerians that ethnic people associate with the most are Yoruba people. All of us, every single ethnic family has probably half Yoruba cousins. If they're not Yoruba cousins, they speak Yoruba. But I can categorically tell you, every single time every single time I have been maligned in terms of language, it has been from a Yoruba person. That is not to say that, Yoruba people are this or that. So to those of us that experience it, it's very weird. It's strange to hear you as a Yoruba person today tell us that you're taught as Yoruba kids not to.
No, hold on. Can I come in here? Because I need to go off. Can I quickly correct that misconception? Can I quickly correct that?
No, not now. Just wait. I'm going to answer her. Asandia, my dad spoke Igbo. He spoke Yoruba. He spoke Hausa because I was born in Kaduna. He was in the war. So my dad spoke all the major languages. We owned a house in Benin. So a huge house in Benin. We owned a house in Port Harcourt, all over Nigeria. But we learned in my house, we spoke English. If you spoke Yoruba, you had to put money in a jar. That was one of the biggest problems I had living, being raised in Nigeria and not knowing Nigeria. So it's not the fact that parents are not teaching people. It's just that because we're majority, until I met Margaret, my wife, I had absolutely no clue that the Igbos were different from the Efik and the Ishan. I had no idea because nobody taught me that in school. They taught me about the British Empire. They taught me about the United States. We had to know the president of every goddamn country in the world. But they never taught us about Nigerian history. Like Mr.
One of the first things I'm going to do after this meeting is to go and learn where Efik is. I have no idea what parts of Nigeria is Efik.
There was
Calabar.
When I first met Margaret, I said to her, all of you guys are
but I'd never heard
all of you guys are Kobo Kobo. It's like Kotlin and Akata, because that's what I've always heard. Subliminal programming.
I'm not saying
everybody.
But can I quickly, because I said 30 minutes. I am not invalidating your experience with Yoruba, saying Yoruba where you are. Sure, you understand? What I'm trying to say is that there is no tribe. I don't think there's any tribe that will consciously say to their children, when you are somewhere and there's another person that doesn't belong to you, make them feel unwelcome. And if we are going to be truthful, of all the major tribes and even the minor tribes, I know that yes, the Efik, the Calabar people are known to be homely and welcoming. Another tribe that is known to be homely and welcoming of strangers is the Yoruba tribe. Sure, you understand? So there is nothing in Yoruba culture that says when you see an outsider, don't make them feel, make them feel left out. No, we are actually very welcoming of outsiders. Now, if you say, and like I said, I'm not saying you're lying. Sure, you understand? But it's not peculiar to Yorubas. It's an individual thing. My ex was Urobo. I will be the only Yoruba there. His mother, his sister, his friends, and they will be there. We can speak English, we can speak broken English, but no, they will insist on speaking Urobo. And I'll say to my ex, but this is not nice. Your mother can speak English. We can all speak English. We can all speak broken English. Why don't we speak one of these two? And they will still go on, and I'll be feeling like, oh my God, I really feel like crying. You understand? So it's not a Yoruba thing. It's just maybe like you said, Yoruba people are more. Ethnic people know Yoruba people more, and that's why you're saying it's more with Yoruba thing.
Maybe.
But it's an individual thing.
And Yoruba
it's an individual thing.
Lagos, we assume you speak Yoruba. I think there's a
exactly, and then Lagos being the capital. So you understand, Lagos being
assume you can speak some level of Yoruba.
Not saying that it's right.
I'm not talking. I'm actually narrating that experience from living in London mostly, not even in Lagos, really, not really. Yeah,
but
Lagos.
you know that in England, Yorubas are the majority Nigerians, just like I think Igbos are the majority Nigerians in America. So you would assume that a Nigerian is Yoruba, and I'm not saying it's right. In fact, it is not right. You understand? And even sometimes I find myself speaking Yoruba, and I have to consciously remind myself that, there are non-Yorubas there. But what I'm saying is that there is no Yoruba culture that says that you must make others feel unwelcome.
But unconscious bias really is about doing things unconsciously. That is the topic. We have been taught, we've heard. Nobody sat us down and say, Igbos, nobody ever sat me down and say, Igbos were bad people and they eat people. I never heard about that before. But I know for a fact that I've heard, Igbo people are very cunning. They will steal your land. And I've even heard it from my family. I've heard it from people around me saying that. And I've always jumped up and said, that's unfair. That's like saying a black man is a thief. That's like saying all Nigerian people are this or that. This show, what I would like all of us to leave this show with, maybe even if it's 10 people that heard it, is that there's a pain in all of us Nigerians because of the failed state of Nigeria, the country. But that's because the people themselves have allowed themselves to be brainwashed and to be segregated by the different tribes, the different languages, because I don't understand how we all can come from Nigeria and come to America and we're best friends with each other. I mean, one of the things, Sandy and I met a while back and I said something wrong I didn't know. So I said something wrong about Calabar and she came for me with like butcher knives, literally pieces. I offended her so quick because I'm all about learning. I'm all about each and every one of us teaching each other. So Mr. Abasi, I understand that you guys want to leave Nigeria, but picture this. Excuse me for a second. Let me please say this and then you can go on to it real quick. My wife and I live in the house, right? Now, God forbid anything happens and she wants to leave. She can't just take the bathroom and the living room. And I keep the kitchen because then I'm going to end up with a house with no bathroom and a living room. So in the meantime, while you guys are trying to work out the logistics, what can we individually do? Because I don't see Nigeria as a whole healing. Even if it's 5 people on this thread, what can we take away from this show today? That's what I like each and every one person.
The solution to fix Nigeria's tribalism or bigotry problem, if you want to call it that, is simply to put the systems in place that doesn't allow it to happen. Put the laws in place. Ban any kind of discriminatory law, whether it's at the state, whether it's at the local government, whether it's at the national level. Remove it all. There shouldn't be a system in a country where you say everyone is equal and then the law enables people not to be equal. You cannot have a situation where someone goes to a university and they can't get admission into that university because of their tribe. They should have a process to stop that from happening. And if it does happen, there should be some punishment for that because it should not be allowed. But because it is allowed,
we're not the government. We're talking about we.
Yeah,
well, the society makes up any government. If people recognize that this is something we need to do, and if we actually, and this is me leaving all the Biafra stuff and saying, right, if we want to actually make a country that works, where everyone feels equal, then you have to put that system in place.
Before you get to the system, Mr. Obasi,
I think you're being very simplistic with that idea of a law.
It's not going to happen anytime soon.
Against you, if I don't like your tribe, if I want to discriminate, you can have the law, but I can systematically discriminate.
Yes.
What you say means assume there's no discrimination in the United States
or
the UK.
No, but that's what I'm saying. It doesn't eliminate it. It doesn't eliminate it, but it gives me a recourse. And it makes you understand that it's not okay.
Because you live in the
you see, like, for example,
wait.
What I was going to say in terms of what you say, for example, I can't say what you've just said is I can say to you, you come to rent my property, and I'm going to say to you, I'm not renting it to you, and I'll make up something. I can make up something and say I'm not renting it to you because I can say, oh, the other guy that came, he looks like he has a more safety job.
All right, time out. We're talking over each other, and that's not acceptable. This is Authentic Conversations with Moji. We're not going to talk over each other because we can't hear each other. Please, I beg you, let's do this respectfully because it would be a waste of an hour and a half and we only have 7 minutes left. We have to take something positive away from this show. So, Mr. Obasi, you're saying that the law should be put into place. Fine. Let's move on. Olabisi, what would you say?
Well, like I said that each tribe has its strong points and its weak points. So if you can, instead of concentrating on the weak points and, harness the energy of the strong points. Mr. Obasi, what I was trying to correct you about was that Nigeria is a federal state acting like a unitary state, not secular. You see, a federal state is America, where a federal state puts so much power in the. So what I was saying, a federal state has the states, the individual components have their own power to make their own laws on a lot of things, to raise their own funds and everything, and then they have just maybe like immigration for the central, you understand? But Nigeria is not acting like a federal state. the individual states do not have the autonomy that a federal state should have. We are acting like, no, you don't. You were calling, you, please hold on. You were talking about secular. Hold on, Mr. Obasi. Hold on.
Don't tell me what I understand or what I don't understand. Is Nigeria a secular state?
Excuse me, I beg you.
Is it a secular state or not? Yes or no?
That's another show. This show is tribalism. Because
it's in regards to religion, Mr. Obasi.
So
you can either be secular or religious.
So it is a secular state.
And Mr. Obasi,
so it is a secular state.
In Kano, in the northern part of Nigeria.
Is it a secular state or not?
Excuse me, the laws that govern us in the western part of Nigeria does not govern the northern part.
No, hold on. Nigeria is a federal state and it's a secular state.
Thank you. I never mentioned anything about federal. I never mentioned anything about federal. I said Nigeria is a
secular regards religion, not the law. Secular regards religion.
Of course.
All right, we have 7 minutes. We're closing the show. We have 7 minutes.
Tell me what I mean.
Secular regards religion.
That's what I meant.
We're not.
Yes, it is a secular state, but it's not in the context of this. It's not. You didn't talk about religion. You didn't talk about religion.
You can't tell me what I mean.
Can we just move on? And
you cannot tell me what I mean.
Okay, Asandia, please give us a closing statement as to what you think we can do to help unconscious bias. We have.
I mean, I'm kind of the same opinion, and I always say this. I'm extremely, and I think anyone that knows me knows, I'm probably called the epic vulture. I am extremely proud. I'm an extremely proud epic woman. However, that does not mean that I'm going to discriminate against the next person. So, instead of me using your weaknesses against you, can I use your positives instead? Yeah. Because what we tend to do is use our weaknesses against each other. We have to be able to use our strengths to strengthen us. I always say this, there's flavor and variety. It would be so boring, if we're all the same. It would be extremely boring, So at the end of the day, so the Igbo person, I say this, I also say this, an epic person or an epic man does not traditionally wake up and say, I'm going to go to the farm, I'm going to go and hustle, I'm going to go and do this, I'm going to go do that. And if your man will probably do that. And this is what Donald Duke said. When Donald came into government, he said, what is our strength? Our strength is that we like enjoyment. We're hospitable. We like to jolly, and we like party, and we like to cook and entertain people. You wake up 10 o'clock in the morning, you find, I'm not saying this is everybody, but you find a typical epic man, or 100 years ago, he's sitting, by the riverside, drinking his family and maybe eating some dog meat or bush meat or God knows whatever it is that he might be eating. So why should we not bring people to Calabar to share that same thing with us? Because that's our strength. So at the end of the day, we're not going to start using our strengths. We're not going to start discriminating between people, saying, oh, do you know what, this person, for example, you hear things, I've heard it, where people say, oh, epic men are lazy. And I'm like, if epic men are lazy, who built Calabar then? Surely no one came down here to build it for us. So at the end of the day,
you're saying that we should use people's strength and not their weaknesses against them, and to give each and everyone an opportunity to show you who they are. Because we're talking about the country. We're talking about how do we stop bigotry? How do we stop tribalism? Yes. When someone comes to apply for a job, are you looking at
education? We have to educate each other about ourselves.
Yeah.
Our generation is too late. What I'm concerned about are the children. We have to let them know about what separates us. That's what brings us together. If we don't know about each other, we will never trust each other.
That's it.
And that's
it. I'm going to ask Margaret to go because we only have 2 more minutes and then the show is over. We can come back again and do this. Go ahead.
I think from my standpoint, and at the risk of sounding repetitive, change starts with me, myself. And I think that if I'm aware of that, then I begin to understand that Diadenikov, for example, doesn't have anything personal against me, but is laboring under the same biases I'm laboring under. In my mind, I think, first of all, self-examination is key. We've got to all examine ourselves and understand that these forces operate with us as individuals. So a lot of self-awareness around what drives our internal biases. The second is, I don't believe in stereotypes, negative or positive. Yeah. So we've had lots of conversation about what the Igbo is like and the Yoruba is like. Okay, what am I like? With a combination of four, is there anybody here who wants to even guess what my characteristics can be based on where my parents came from? I think the greatest individual comes as we recognize that an individual is unique to themselves. Asandia has characteristics that come together in a way that no one else does. Moji has characteristics that come to a way like no one else does. And I think it is recognizing those positive aspects, encouraging everyone to be their authentic selves, that makes them the best performer that they can be. Now imagine a nation that is built of people like that, where every individual is taken as an individual and allowed to just thrive. I don't believe Nigeria has failed. I believe we have significant challenges. I don't believe the state of the country, is going to fix it. I think that we the people, have to fix that. Those are my last.
For me, I have been doing the same thing for about 10 years because I looked around me and I looked at the people and we continue to point fingers at that person. We point fingers at Ojuku, we point fingers at Awolowo, we point fingers at this and that person. At the end of the day, we are all individual standing people. The way I treat you is why we're friends. The way I treat you is why you and I are in a relationship. The way I treat Mr. Obasi, who I met on a thread a few days ago, is the reason why he accepted my invitation to come on this show. If we walk around the world, because we're all scattered around the world these days like birds, if we walk around the world and treat each other with respect, first and foremost, compassion and empathy, I think we'll start to change the narrative, because the moment I walk into a room and I just assume that everybody's Yoruba and I start speaking Yoruba, I have discounted the people that are not Yoruba in the room. I have eroded their identity, and I have put them in a defensive mode, which is usually why we run into problems in a group like this. Because one person wants to show that they're much more intelligent and educated and they know the history. How about you teach me the history? Take people like me that left Nigeria when they were 15, 16 and lived with white people all my life till I was about maybe 35 or something like that. Take people like me that grew up in Nigeria and I was never taught anything. The only place I went to was Ijero-Ekiti, which was our village. I didn't even know what they did in Ikere, and I'm in Ado, or I'm in Ijero. I didn't understand the difference in the dialect either. In that one Ekiti, there's like 200 different dialects. So when people talk about tribe, we're really not a tribe anymore. We're an ethnic group, in my opinion. And if we start to cross-educate each other, I think there'll be a lot of room for compassion, empathy, and a bit of an understanding. And Mr. Obasi and I had a conversation, by the way, behind the other day. And I said, everything that you guys are looking for, everything the silk straps, what most of us in Nigeria,
I saw it there one day and then I didn't.
Is what most of us in Nigeria are looking for. We're looking for good education, we're looking for good roads, good housing, good everything. And when we start to talk about all those things, those are things that a nation owes all of us. But who decides who gets into power? We do. Until we start to look at ourselves in the mirror, I don't think we're going anywhere. Individual activism is what this is all about. I can't tell you guys how amazing this conversation has been, and I can't thank you enough for taking the time out of your lives to do this. Mr. Obasi, I'd like to officially invite you back to talk about the Igbo issues. and I'll be able to bring in a print of a village in Nigeria that was supposed to be on here, because I think education is key to where we're going with this bigotry, tribalism, and all of that in Nigeria.
Yeah, thanks for organizing. Like I said, the simple thing is everyone is the same. Every human being is the same. We all want the same things. We all want to have the best. We all want to live a peaceful life, to prosper, to interact, to love, to share, to live to our full potential. And to me, that starts with a fundamental thing: freedom to choose. So anyway, I don't want to go into the whole.
I'm going to take everybody off, and I'm going to thank you, Olabisi, for coming on. I'm going to thank you, Asandi. I'm going to say thank you, Mr. Okonu and Mr. and Mrs. Adeneko. Thank you so very much for coming. And Margaret never comes on my show, so thank you for coming on this one.
Thank you, everyone.
Great to see you guys. Thank you, guys. You guys hold on 1 second. I have to say thank you to you, the audience, for staying and coming on so long. Share the video. The whole purpose of this show is for each and every one of us to transform our lives and to become a much more compassionate, empathetic, and understanding people. That is the only way we'll grow. Without changing yourselves, you are not going to change the community. I hope to bring Mr. Obasi and Olabisi and a few other people back on so we can talk about this succeeding that people keep talking about. Breaking Nigeria up into pieces, I'm not sure is the right way to go. I don't know much about Nigeria. And that's why I continue to say, pardon my ignorance when I ask questions. Let's start teaching each other about things we don't know and stop attacking each other. Understanding that we're not all brought up the same way. And even if we are, we all don't learn everything at the same time. This is Authentic Conversations Emoji, and thank you for joining me. I appreciate that. It's so fun.